certified by Weather Rate.
Good evening, folks. I'm meteorologist Ross Mumal here. A quick update on the tropics. We're an hour away from the latest from the National Hurricane Center, but still a low chance of formation for this area that has been highlighted here. Just a 20% chance of development over the next 7 days, including the Eastern Gulf, Tampa, Orlando, Northeast Florida, and then extending into the Atlantic just off the coast from the first coast. But we are expecting at a minimum an enhancement in rain and thunderstorm activity starting on Wednesday, continuing through the end of the week and for your 4th of July. So because of that, we have issued a weather impact alert for Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday for numerous thunderstorms and localized flooding. We'll have much more on any potential risks and threats on air and on First Coast News Plus.
Stay with the First Coast's most accurate weather team. Stay safe and informed. Download the First Coast News app now. First Coast News, on your side.
Good evening, folks. Welcome in yet again. I'm meteorologist Ross Mumal here with your 10 p.m. update on not only today's happenings, but over the rest of the week and specifically on the tropics that could impact us by the end of this week into your holiday weekend here across the First Coast. Obviously, there's a ton of folks who have plans either for the 4th of July on Friday for some of those firework festivities and sightings, or perhaps you're having a boat day, a beach day, any sort of outdoor plans that you might have for the holiday weekend on Saturday or Sunday could certainly be impacted by some of the rain and thunderstorms that might be on the way here by the end of the week and into the weekend. But at least for tonight, things starting to quiet down at least a little bit. We had a lot of thunderstorms earlier this evening and even into the late afternoon hours, especially up and down I-95, but all of those have begun to move now well inland this evening. A different look, though, from water vapor satellite imagery. You can just kind of see this rotation, this swirl in the upper levels of the atmosphere, this upper level low, just a cool feature just north of the Bahamas and to our east here this evening. But that is eventually going to move off to our northeast here throughout the remainder of tonight and the next couple of days. But here's another look. You can see all that moisture and rain pushing well off to our west, even further west of I-75 in that Valdosta area. So dry skies here across the First Coast now, and the storms did actually give way to some pretty comfortable temperatures here through the rest of this evening. This afternoon, highs were in the upper 80s and lower 90s, now sitting for many of us in the mid to upper 70s. Mayport at 81, but generally speaking, this is a bit cooler than we have seen here over about the last 3 or 4 weeks. So, hey, we'll take the cooler weather when we can get it. But a lot of heavy rainfall in some localized spots here across the First Coast. Northern St. Johns County, so pretty much straight up Route 1 through Durbin, up into the Bay Meadows and South Sides area. So St. John's Town Center getting some pretty heavy rain today. And then much of eastern and central Duval County, where we had multiple flood advisories and even a flash flood warning at one time. And then all those storms continue to push off to the north and northwest. So Nassau County and much of southeast Georgia getting a good bit of some heavy rain. So just around the metro, here are some totals from today. Craig Airport over an inch. The Jacksonville Airport on the other end of that, really not seeing all that much, less than 2/10. And then Ortega, nearly 1.75 inches from today's storms and heavy rainfall. And we could see much more locations that could get upwards of 1 to 2 inches over the next couple of days. Now, your Tuesday tomorrow, could we see some isolated to scattered thunderstorms? Yes, of course we could. It's Florida, and it's going to be the first day of July, so pretty much those go hand in hand that, yes, you're going to see some thunderstorms, but might actually be the driest day of the week when you think about overall coverage of rain and thunderstorms. Wednesday certainly is going to be the other end of that spectrum, if not numerous to nearly widespread rain and storms on the way for your Wednesday. We'll get into why exactly that is here coming up. And then Thursday, your 4th of July on Friday, and even into the weekend, we're still going to be monitoring for, at the very least, some scattered showers and thunderstorms. And I think at the most, potentially, again, widespread storms going to be on the way from a potential tropical development or system that, tries to spin up there over the next couple of days and by the end of the week. So let's at least look at your Tuesday tomorrow. Isolated to scattered thunderstorms, temperatures in the upper 80s to near 90, very close to where we were at today. Most of the storm activity is going to be right along that 95 corridor. So it's going to be mainly concentrated where those sea breeze collisions are going to collide and begin to fire off some of those storms. So before that, really between about 11 a.m. and I'd say 2 o'clock, we'll see some isolated scattered convection from the Gulf Coast spreading inland. So from the southwest to the northeast, then the sea breeze collides pretty much right over Jacksonville. That's when our best chance to not only see rainfall will be, but potentially for some of those stronger thunderstorms. So 4, 5, 6 p.m. at the latest for some of the stronger storms. And then thanks to the upper level flow very lightly out of the west and southwest, most of these will begin to push offshore then after sunset tomorrow night, and then during the overnight period, dry skies. But this is the area that ourselves and the National Hurricane Center have now been monitoring for about the last day, 2 days or so. Low chance here, only a 20% chance of development over the next 7 days. So the likelihood of seeing a hurricane, very, very small. It's not zero, but very close to. Now, the likelihood of seeing a tropical storm, maybe a little bit more, but still very, very low. I think at the most we perhaps see a tropical depression form, maybe a tropical storm as it moves off to our east. If that is the case, if that is the trek that it does, end up taking, certainly could be a possibility. But generally speaking, we're really just anticipating a pretty heavy rainmaker, some gustier winds by Friday and into the weekend, but nothing to necessarily, run out to the store and buy everything off the shelves yet. That is not the case. This is really just something you need to be prepared for. We're going to see more rain and thunderstorms more than anything. So because of the heavy rainfall that we're expecting and from the storms that we have seen now over the past 2 days, localized flooding going to continue to climb the ladder on our concern and threat, risk ladder, so to speak. San Marco last night and yesterday afternoon saw a decent amount of flooding. We had plenty of videos and photos sent into our newsroom showing people trying to scoop water literally out of their cars and dump it out. And they've said, that's a big issue that they've had in San Marco for years now. This is not news to a lot of folks, but even here today, yet again, we had some heavy rain. Those flash flood warnings came out, and San Marco yet again had more street flooding and causing some concerns, or causing some issues, perhaps I should say. More rain piling on top of that, not going to help things anymore. I mean, the ground's going to be very soggy, very saturated in some of those locations that are already flood prone. So because of that, you top on more rainfall to it. Flooding going to continue to be top of the list here for some concerns over the next couple of days and into the end of the week. But why are we having that enhancement in rain and thunderstorm activity? Well, got this cold front dropping in from the north. Ahead of that, still westerly and southwesterly flow. So that warm, moist air coming up out of the Gulf of America, enhancing our overall thunderstorm activity just with the sea breeze collisions alone. Then you have more moisture come in from the north. We're really expecting a widespread rainfall through Wednesday afternoon and evening. Then as you transition into Thursday and then eventually Friday, this front begins to stall out. So it turns from a cold front into a stationary front and pretty much just begins to sag either right over the I-10 corridor or slightly further south down towards central Florida from Orlando over to Tampa, so the I-4 corridor. Wherever it does happen to completely stall, winds on the southern end of it going to be coming up out of the south and southwest, northern end out of the northeast primarily, and that'll start to show a little bit of that counterclockwise rotation here. So some models are trying to depict this fairly well, either right over central Florida or perhaps just off to the east of the Space Coast there. So this low pressure system might be a little bit too far to the northeast here, should be maybe a little situated further off to the southwest over Orlando. But either way you see it, we're still going to have that chance for some potential tropical development from that. But the big story is really going to still be the rainfall from this system. Now, for the Jacksonville area, we're really looking at about 1 to 2 inches, 3 inches locally in some locations. If we get some drier air advected in on the north side, southeast Georgia might actually see our lowest rain totals here over the next week. But then take a peek further off to the southwest and especially down towards the Gulf Coast. You could see some locations seeing anywhere from 2 to 4 inches along the Suwannee Valley or Suwannee River Valley and that I-75 corridor. So from Lake City down to Gainesville, yes, you could see about anywhere from 2 to at least 4 inches of rain here over the next 7 days, or at least through Sunday night. And then those heavy rainfall totals continue down to Cedar Key and along the Gulf Coast all the way down to Tampa Bay. So Gulf Coast likely going to see the higher rain totals, but don't let that fool you into a calm, if that's the correct way to say it perhaps. By really the end of the week, we still have a very good chance to see some pretty heavy rainfall here across the first coast, specifically on Wednesday. As I said, widespread rain expected, not only from the sea breeze collisions, but from that front moving in from the north. So we do already have a marginal risk of excessive rainfall in place for Wednesday. By Thursday and Friday, the slight risk area is going to be much more situated down towards the Gulf Coast and the Tampa area. So here is another way to look at it, and this is the American GFS model. So I'm going to show you two separate models in two different formats. Hopefully it's not too confusing for you. Drier air right here along the cold front. So right there it is. To the north, that's slightly cooler, but mainly drier air. Ahead of it, still very, very moist air, not only at the surface, but in the mid and upper levels of the atmosphere. So here comes the cold front by Thursday and into Friday. Doesn't take it as far south, keeps a little bit more of that drier air further to the west, keeps the more moist, warm air right over us, the tropical-like air mass in place. And then notice, from Friday through the end of the weekend, so here comes Saturday and Sunday, you get this little bit of some swirl, not only at the lower levels at the surface, but in the mid to upper levels as well. It's pulling in all this moisture from the Atlantic here now, keeping us with those heavy rain chances and the heightened chance for thunderstorm activity through your holiday weekend. So in this scenario, we get a lot more rainfall or persistent rain through Friday and into the weekend. Now, let's show it a little bit of a different way. Here's the European model. And this is showing pretty much atmospheric energy and winds anywhere from about 1,000 to 5,000 feet aloft. So right here's the cold front on Thursday. A lot of energy along that frontal boundary. As it slides southward there, starts to begin to kind of dissipate, stalls out down towards central Florida. And you're really not going to be able to notice any sort of spin until we get towards Saturday and Sunday. There's a little bit of it, much further off to our east and eventually moving to the northeast. And I'll do two things. One, it'll take a lot of the atmospheric energy away from the first coast, which is good news. Also, likely going to bring in some drier air on the backside of this system, which means that would inhibit overall rain chances and coverage, primarily for southeast Georgia, but also possibly for the Jacksonville area and the metro as well. So kind of two separate scenarios there. The system could also just kind of meander around central Florida, and in that scenario, we could still get some pretty decent rainfall rates and totals there as you head through the holiday weekend. Now, one last thing I just want to point out here, really starting on Friday and then continuing through Saturday and Sunday, if we do get a surface low down near the Orlando area or central Florida, we're going to get locked into a pretty consistent northeast breeze. Now, it's not going to be super strong. Wind gusts out at the beach might exceed upwards of, 25 to 30 miles per hour. But you get this for a couple days, might start to back up the St. Johns River just a little bit, and then you factor in 1 to maybe 3 inches of freshwater rainfall on top of that, some intercoastal, minor coastal flooding, and similar stories for the St. Johns River Basin might be something we're also going to have to watch very, very closely. So primarily it's going to be, do the winds come in and start to back the river up a little bit? Do the freshwater rainfall add to the flooding concern? A lot of different scenarios to keep in mind and to consider here to the end of the week. One thing that's probably not going to limit this at all is going to be the Saharan dust. Cold front's pretty much going to keep it all pinned down across South Florida and the Florida Keys. So any drier air associated with the dust really not going to make much of a difference with regards to any potential development. And of course, we've already had Tropical Storm Andrea. That storm moved off into the North Atlantic and dissipated about a week and a half, maybe 2 weeks ago here now. And then we had Tropical Storm Barry over the weekend, make landfall in eastern Mexico, and actually still bringing some beneficial rainfall to South Texas, down near the Rio Grande Valley, Corpus Christi, Brownsville, seeing some rainfall from that. If we would happen to get a storm, it would be named Tropical Storm Chantal, but that does not appear to be the most likely case. So I want to reiterate, it's just a 20%